I was born in 1840 into a warm and comfortable family environment. Everybody loved me because they felt how much I myself loved everybody. On the other hand, my sensitivity knew no bounds. The smallest of trifles would hurt or offend me. My governess called me a child of glass. When I was 14 years old, my mother died, and I was devastated. My sister, Alexandra, and my brothers, Modeste and Anatoly, were my passionate, lifelong friends. And Alexandra's son, Bob, later became my adored companion.
When Tchaikovsky was in his 30s, his sexual identity became the topic of gossip. Hastily, rashly, he resolved to marry. But he fled in panic to Italy, Switzerland, Paris, and Vienna. The mere mention of his bride's name, Antonina, would incapacitate him. Tchaikovsky had earlier reported to his family about his future wife, Antonina Milyukova.
She is utterly poor, educated not above an average level, apparently very kind and capable of permanent attachments. But the first time I kissed her, a pain struck my heart, and I was seized with such anxiety that it seems I began to weep. I made the effort and mastered myself and quickly assumed a calm appearance.
A week after the wedding, Tchaikovsky wrote to Anatoly,
"Beginning today, the terrible crisis has passed and I am recovering. But the crisis was terrible, 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 were it not for my love for you and my other dear ones, which supported me in the midst of this unbearable mental torment. It might well have gone badly, that is, with illness or madness."
Later on, looking back, Tchaikovsky reflected about his wife.
"She is guilty of nothing toward me. Therefore, to let her feel that I do not love her, or that I look upon her as an unendurable encumbrance, would be cruel and base. But what remains is to pretend. And to pretend one's entire life is the greatest of tortures. How could I now even begin to think of my work? I fell into deep despair and began to long passionately, eagerly for death."
Anatoly arranged for a separation from Antonina Milyukova. Meanwhile, Tchaikovsky had begun an intense 13-year correspondence with the widow Nadezhda von Meck, who liberally supported him with a monthly annuity, but declined ever to meet him. Tchaikovsky actually appreciated this arrangement. He wrote to von Meck,
"There is certainly one trait which draws us together. We both suffer from one and the same illness, and that illness is misanthropy. But misanthropy of a particular kind, at the root of which there is absolutely no hatred or contempt for people. Persons who suffer from this illness fear disenchantment, that yearning for the ideal that follows upon every intimacy. It comes as no surprise to me that, loving my music, you feel no need to make the acquaintance of its author. You fear you will not find in me those qualities which your imagination, being inclined to idealize, have invested in me, and you are quite right. I feel that upon closer acquaintance with me, you would not find that complete harmony between musician and man of which you dream."
As a professor at the Moscow Conservatory, Tchaikovsky impressed many as dignified and restrained, even disagreeably aloof, sullen, sarcastic, unsmiling. In familiar company, he was emotional, even theatrical. He laughed easily and sincerely. According to Julius Bloch, an American businessman who owned a Moscow shop, whenever Tchaikovsky felt the need to seek out his friends, his melancholy changed as if by magic into optimism and cheerfulness. In that mood, a nimbus of charm, endearment, of enchantment even, seemed to emanate from him. The very atmosphere of any room he entered seemed to glow, and it would be hard to imagine a more sympathetic and delightful companion. Bloch's prized possessions included a phonograph, which he had obtained from Thomas Edison in New Jersey. He demonstrated it for the Tsar, and he used it to record many of Russia's leading concert artists. Tchaikovsky called it
the most surprising, the most beautiful, the most inventive and interesting invention of the end of the 19th century.
And in January 1890, Julius Bloch recorded Peter Ilyich Tchaikovsky in excited conversation with the soprano Elizaveta Lavrovskaya and the conductor Vasily Safonov.
Эта трель могла бы быть лучше. Вот молодец! А иди еще выше! Питер Юргенс из Москвы. Что сейчас говорил? Как ты голос запомнил?
But this side of Tchaikovsky was at war with darker forces. He was prone to traumatic insomnia. He would wake up suddenly, trembling with fear as if he had been struck. To Madame von Meck he confided,
Generally speaking, I would say that physically I'm a healthy person, though psychologically more sick than healthy. The one and the other are directly linked, but for myself, I would say that my soul influences my body more than the reverse. That is, I have observed that when I am calm, I'm also healthy. Late in life, I have become extremely sensitive to all sorts of impressions. I've grown lachrymose, weeping constantly without any need, about a book, about music, even sometimes simply under the influence of the beauty of nature.
Tonight's Pathétique Symphony, composed some 16 years after the crisis of Tchaikovsky's wedding, was one of his last compositions. He conducted the premiere in St. Petersburg on October 28, 1893. 9 days later, he died, very possibly of cholera, the same disease that killed his mother. He was only 53 years old, but he looked worn and aged, like a man in his 70s. What do we know about the relationship between the Pathétique Symphony and the events of Tchaikovsky's life? Well, we know that the Sixth Symphony has a program. It tells a story. But Tchaikovsky chose not to disclose it. To his beloved nephew Bob, to whom it is dedicated, he wrote,
The program will remain an enigma to all. It is saturated with subjective feeling. Often, when composing it in my mind, I shed many tears.
But Tchaikovsky did leave a preliminary scenario for what became the Sixth Symphony.
The ultimate essence of the symphony's plan is life. The first movement, all impulsive passion, confidence, a thirst for activity. Finale, death, result of collapse.
And Tchaikovsky added to Bob,
I absolutely believe this to be the best, and in particular, the sincerest of all my creations.